Aloha. Happy Wednesday. It is 70% at 9:55 here on the big island of Hawaii. And today I'd like to talk about relationship compatibility and authenticity. When we're authentic with ourselves, we are more in alignment with the way that we engage with the outside world. And being authentic with ourselves means that in the moment, we are in alignment with what we want for ourselves, our internal desires. And those internal desires shift, so we don't have to stay like locked into one mindset. So it's nice to remember to give ourselves freedom. Authenticity is when we are tuned in with what we want, even if we don't know what that is, that's still recognizing the internal self and being able to communicate that authenticity to other people. Now, a lot of time we get into relationships with people that aren't really in alignment with who we are. I have a lot of experience with that. So I've definitely seen my patterns in life, and I recognize that the reason why I continue to be in relationships that weren't authentic with the way I see and feel is because there was a lack of self-love within me. And I also had a sense of abandonment within my psyche from when I was a childhood. Now, speaking of childhood, if we go back to childhood when we are growing up with the adults around us that are programming our minds, most of the time, our voices get stifled. Our desires get stifled. When we want to explore things, sometimes that can get stifled because parents can, a lot of the time, not be really in tune with the child. They're busy with their own lives and they're there with the children, and there isn't a sense of engagement to explore the authenticity of the child because they aren't being authentic within themselves, right? We're curing, healing generational curses of inauthenticity in the mindset. So it's important to recognize that the reason why a lot of time we aren't authentic in ourselves is because we don't really realize it, even if we do sometimes. And the voice gets stifled, gets shut down from when we're a child, and we learn very early before we realize we're learning that we're not speaking our truths because we aren't being heard. And so that carries on into our teenage years where it's really awkward and no one's really listening and we don't want to really talk. And then into adulthood where we're trying to connect hearts and minds and bodies with other humans. And the greatest reward that we can give ourselves is self-love, because then we can authentically align with others. And it takes being authentic in that. And I find that it's energetically mindful to be authentic with others and ourselves before going into a relationship. That way we can be clear about what we really want and what our desires are, and to see if that other person matches up. And it takes time to nurture that sometimes. Someone may say, yes, that's what I want, and then really they don't, because they don't realize their authenticity also. So that's why I find it's really nice to take time and create space, sacred space, to get to know the self so that we can then align authentically with other people. I saw this really beautiful video the other day that was talking about relationships, and this isn't just sexual or intimate relationships. This is friendship. This is coworkers and things like that. And the guy was saying that we a lot of the times push aside what we really want in our relationships in life because we just settle for what's there, because there's a fear there, a fear that we won't be fulfilled. There's a fear there that we won't have what we want, right? And so he was saying in the video that if a woman wants to be in love with a man who's wealthy, she'll have that. But what she does is that she thinks that she won't. So therefore she dates other people that don't have money. And that's just one example. And it totally clicked for me. And I was like, aha, that's it. Because For me, I realized before I wanted love so much that I was willing to subconsciously push aside my own desires because I didn't quite recognize what they were because I wasn't really dialed into my own awareness. I hadn't pushed all of the cloudiness out of my mind space so I could recognize what it is I really want in a relationship and friendships and things like that. And so, like say for instance, for me personally, I'm 40 years old. I don't have children. I don't have the desire to have a child. And so if I were to be in a relationship with someone that wanted a child, that would not be authentic to myself and it wouldn't be authentic to them. Is it possible that I could fall in love and maybe want a child with that person? It's possible, but for the most part, I already know that that's not what I want. And just like with men, if a man does not want to have the family life, they simply want a partner to explore and have fun with without having that other sense of responsibility, they will a lot of the time be in relationships with women that want children because they think that's the only way that they can get love. And then what happens is that the man isn't happy, the woman isn't happy, and the children don't understand why the parents aren't present. It's this really interesting revolving cycle of the psyche and the recognition of the programming of our past and being in alignment with what it is and, well, being in alignment to discover what it is that we really want so that we can then love ourselves and allow that to come in. Because what I've realized is that we don't have to chase after anything. All we have to do is make the statement, right, that this is what we want to manifest and it will come. So it's just all about how patient we are to allow what we want to come to us. I fully believe that in this lifetime we can have whatever it is that we want. It's a matter of recognizing that what it is that we want and making the statement, declaring that with being open to change, because the things that we want change and the things that we desire change. And it's the same thing in a relationship. Our partner or a partner has their own sets of desires and not sure whether they're like authentic about what that is, but those things will change also. And so that's why it's so important to communicate with ourselves what it is that we want, to communicate with other people with what it is that we want. Because what I've realized is that there's so much distortion in the human psyche because we aren't dialed into what we want as an individual. We live in a consumer world where we're taught to go to work, to buy, to eat. And we're so overwhelmed with all of this outside stimuli that we've lost our sense of self. And this isn't anyone's fault. This is the way the world has, evolved. And now we are wakening up. We are being activated, I should say. That's a proper term. To recognize this so that we can make our own internal choices. And because I look at it this way, at this point in my life, I'm finally embracing this fact. It's like, I'd much rather be single and by myself in my own yummy space to create the reality that I want versus trying to put a square in a circle, to ram in my own desires into someone else and then telling them that they're wrong if they don't match it. That's a huge trap in relationships that we get into that revolves around from not speaking the internal desires and or not recognizing them, is that we think we know what we want. We know we want love, right? And there's a program somewhere in there in the subconscious mind of what that looks like. A lot of the time it's based on movies and books and songs versus the actual reality of what's going on within the self, right? Because the outside world is merely a reflection of what's going on within. And so, yet at the same time, when we recognize the internal mirror, then the world starts to reflect that, not that we start to reflect the outside world. It's a pole flip in consciousness. And so what happens is that we get into relationships and we know how we want to be treated, or we think we do. And then we expect the other person to be able to deliver the desires that we think that we want in a relationship. And then what happens is that it's all yummy at first. We put on different masks of ourselves, of not showing our authentic truth to that person so that they'll like us in a subconscious manner. And then we start to get, and then we move in together, and then all of this starts to unfold, because who we truly are authentically is going to come out. It's going to come out. There is no other choice. So it all depends on what that authenticity is, because whatever you are in the moment is authentic to who yourself, until you realize that maybe it's not. There's stories. And so when we recognize that there's no way that we can make other people be in alignment with our desires, or to change them, or to like belittle them and berate them because they're not matching up to our own desires, that is creating so much distortion in the ley line. And if you have children, you're teaching your children that. And that's where it all starts. We have to be mindful of the children. We have to be mindful of the children and the way that we are programming them in this life. Show them what love is. Teach them that it changes. Teach them that love changes, because our desires change. I have changed the way that I want love many times in my life. And I'm in this new awakening of what I really want, and I feel really empowered and strong. And in the meantime, I'm loving myself and creating relationships with my community, and, you know, being really dialed into self-care and nurturing my body. And it helps. It works. Do I get lonely in my heart sometimes, or in my mind, I should say? Sure. It's part of the humanistic experience to want to connect in that way. Yet at the same time, we're all like bumping heads with each other instead of like touching each other's hearts. That's where it all starts. That's where we can create peace, is turning the mind into the heart to really realize what it is we want in this life, what our desires are. Kathleen just said conscious parenting. That's right. It's called mindfulness, compassion. When we have mindfulness built around compassion, well, that's what it is. When we're aware outside of the egoic self of the programming that someone else told us, then we really get dialed in. And the awakening to that, the recognition of these things, can cause a lot of distortion in our own circuitry, because we're wakening up. We are being activated to recognize different patterns in ourselves. So of course that's going to make things seem a little crazy for a while. Like there's a literal reprogramming of the hardwire of the brain and the chemical responses in the body that has to rework itself to be in attunement with the new awarenesses. It's like our nervous system. Our nervous system has to attune to the new frequencies of our consciousness, literally on a chemical neurotransmitter frequency. This is the actual medical scientific reality of the body. And so when we recognize that, when we're rewiring ourselves, that our body, and that means our external world, shifts that as well. Our vibrational aura reaches far out, not just right here in this little self. So everything that's within a certain proximity and all around the world, that is recognized. Like that energy is felt. So it goes far beyond what's just in our little house and in our little community and things like that. So there's a whole rewiring of the ether that actually takes place with a heightened mindfulness around awareness. I find that the most responsible thing energetically that a human can do is to recognize its own self and desires, and to not be afraid to speak those things. Because I can tell you, because I tell myself this because I know, is that we are to speak truth no matter what it is, when it really counts to us, to the people that it really matters the most to. That's the way I feel. I feel like when we really communicate to those that are in our lives in intimate ways, that's the most important thing. That does not mean that you will be received in speaking your truth, but that doesn't matter, because the fact is that you are aligning within your own authentic self, and the universe, the multiverse, loves that. And we start to align, and all these beautiful synchronicities start to happen, and we start to align with people that are reflecting this newness, the authenticity of ourselves. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and it's very encouraging. And the fact is that if you think you're going to be alone forever, if you think you're not going to have love and to be able to have this mate, well, that's you casting your own magic. That's you casting that magic. Deep down, we all want it. It's all part of the human experience. So if you feel like you're in a place that you're not loving yourself, the outside world isn't reflecting that love to you, realize that I am a reflective mirror for you in this moment, right? Like once we shift our perception and realize oh, we can have the love that we want. I can have the love that I desire. I can create a business that I want. I can have my awesome conscious tribe where I live. It's about knowing that, not just believing it, knowing it, and then allowing it to come in. It starts to show up much quicker than we realize. The power of positive thought, that I know that a lot of people roll their eyes to that because it's just been so in our faces. However, it is absolutely valid because I have seen it in my life. When I started to change my perception of myself, it was like instantly that day I started to recognize synchronicities of that reflection, little bitty universal surprises. It's important to recognize in this human life that we expect everything to happen right now or else we're not going to have it. And that is simply not true. Just like the awareness that we've had to get to this point to recognize, it takes space. It takes creating the circuitry of the neural pathways with the etheric web that we are in and the gravitational field to pull those things in. One of the things that someone told me is, don't forget to ask what you want. Not just saying I want, but to ask what you want. Because the guides, the universe is listening to what it is you want. And the more you say it, the more you're in alignment and loving yourself that way. The universe is it's a natural thing of law of attraction, the meeting of vibrations. Because in the gravity field of the earth, it requires balance, the gravity field. And so if you think about your thoughts and the gravitational pull of the earth, well, then you really get to dial up the manifestation of your wizardry. The mind is a powerful thing, and the heart is even more powerful because the heart is where we feel, the mind is where we think. And if we turn into the heart and listen to the solar plexus, then the mind will give us the messages to receive. And that's what's so beautiful. So I understand how it can feel heavy and to lose the vision of what we want in life. So I see that can be very discouraging, especially when we've had a really heavy life of things that created this story that we're telling ourselves and we're telling other people, and we're just not manifesting in the alignment that we want. We have to change the script, rewrite the script to the computer program that's in here running. It's very helpful, and it's very encouraging to our own psyche. It's encouraging to our own self-love. And it's recognizing that, okay, I realize that I've been down, I've been depressed, I've been woe is me and playing the victim of the past. But the fact is that if you want to be happy in life, it's about recognizing that those feelings aren't you. Those feelings are derived from a story that someone else and you made yourself feel. Stepping outside of the box of the programming to where it's oh, now I can get a pen and a piece of paper and I can write down my own desires and what I want. That's becoming a sovereign being. If you allow someone to dictate your emotions, you are not sovereign. If you allow someone to dictate your present moment, that is not being a sovereign being. Now, I say that. Yet at the same time, it is a moment of reflection to create sovereignty. So everything has a course and a path. It's all about the way our life feels to create a sovereign feeling. And that's where the power comes in. That's when we get to align with other people that are really strong and recognize the ones that maybe aren't. And then we can see how to engage, because not everyone has super confidence, not everyone has super strength. And even the ones that do, it still is on a wave, highs and lows, because we are living by the solar plexus. We are living an emotional wave on earth, in society, because we're all connected. Most of the thoughts that you think are not your own. Those are what you're listening to, that's coming from the entire web. The entire web. So all of it, like if you're having an issue in your mind and you don't recognize all these negative thoughts, yet for some reason you think they're yours, they're not. They're not. They're passerbyers that give us information that we can choose to pluck out of that spectrum. And the more we love ourselves, the higher vibrational thoughts that we receive come in. Since I've gotten much more dialed in with listening versus thinking that I'm thinking, I realize now that I listen all the time. It's only when I set the intention to think and then I move out of the way to listen, because I'm not thinking ever. I'm listening. That's what's so beautiful about recognizing consciousness and the authenticity of how we get to choose, because it's a co-created experience. We get thoughts from the channel that come in, and then we get to pluck those thoughts and decide how to engage with them in our own selves and the outside world. So that's like a co-created assistance to create realities, or to be involved in the reality in the moment. Because it all shifts, therefore it's all an illusion. It's a dream. We're in this dream together of all these amazing things that can come into the mind, and music and food and sex and all this stuff. So creating balance in our own authenticity brings us those things that we want. If you don't want children, then don't date people that want children. Like, if you don't want to be in a committed relationship, let people know that you just want to have fun and keep things light, and you'll meet that person. Like, that's the beautiful thing. Like, we get to be sovereign beings in our choices, and our choices come from how we communicate those thoughts with other people. It's really simple when we get down to thinking about it in this like uncomplex way, because it's really simple. It's really like not that complicated. And what's so amazing about the channel in here, the human mind in with the physical body, is all we have to do is tell it what to do, and it will start to do it. That's how you program your subconscious mind. It's not trying to figure out how to solve this and how am I going to be better at this. It's like, no, I am better at that. I am good at this. Tell your mind that, and watch to see how your reality starts to shift. If you want to heal your body, start to tell your body how to heal itself. We are that divine. We are that divine in this human suit, that all we have to do is tell it. And sometimes we have to talk a little bit more than other times, because sometimes the programming runs really deep. And to me, the recognition is in the reflection. Who's showing up in your life? Are you starting to align with more conscious beings? Are you starting to align with people that make you feel loved because you're loving yourself, right? Like, or are you continually battling with people? You go to the store and you're arguing with the cashier, or you get in your car and you're flicking someone off because they pulled in behind you and maybe they didn't see you. Like it's a state of recognizing the rhythm to your own pace. It's the dial. That's the reflective mirror. It's important to realize that the mind is a place of listening and a place of creation. And it's a reflection also. If you're hearing a lot of encouragement in your mind, if you're having a lot of inspiration to come through within your creativity, that's like in a more high mind. But if something in there is telling you that you're not good enough, that you're not worthy enough, that you're not going to have love, that's a program. And that's something to look at. It's not a bad thing. You don't have to hate yourself because of it. You don't have to be guilty or anything like that, because we don't know until we know, even when we think we do. Everything's constantly changing. We have to lighten up and be light, like not take life so personally and not put other people in these boxes of what we want. If you meet someone and you tell them who you are and your desires and where your consciousness is, just listen to what they have to say. Watch what they do. They'll show you, we show each other. It's just when there is a sense of abandonment in there, and a lack of self-love and maybe some unworthiness in there, that distorts it. So the vision of seeing the other person as a reflection of ourself is miscued. It's not clear. And I love being really upfront and communicating all of these things, because I find that the more I'm communicative about myself and how I see and feel about consciousness and mindfulness, the person will let me know real quick if they're on that level and if they're open to evolving more, if they are evolving more. Do we want to be with people that need all this healing? I don't know. I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I've done those things. Like, I feel like I'm being mindful of myself and I feel healed, whatever that is. I don't need to heal myself. I'm mindful of myself in the moment as much as I can be, based on the reflections of myself and other people. So it's like, what kind of mate do you want to attract? Do you want to attract someone that needs a bunch of healing because it's going to be a reflection of you? Or would you rather be in alignment with yourself and your own authenticity to pull that into you? Because then it's like, oh my gosh, you're past all the stuff too. You're mindful too. And then that creates a greater space to deal with the highs and the lows of the solar plexus wave when things come up. Because, we don't live in this world where everything's just happy and la la all the time, because we're connected to other people's consciousness. We are all one. One. We're all connected in here. So there's so many thoughts that come in. So when we realize that we are dancing with other people's psyches, then it assists us not to take things so personally, because we all have a story that we're all telling each other and ourselves. And so it's like, pick your choice. This is your dream. Pick your story on how you want to write it, based on the co-created efforts that you're receiving inside of your channel. And that's where the magic really happens. That's when we can really have fun with someone and not have to be triggered by someone else's like deeply rooted pain. And, I have had deeply rooted pain, and, I live my life now in a way that is in alignment with what I want in the moment. Even though I think I know what I want, right? You're right. I think I know what I want and what feels good to me. I don't keep myself in that box either of expectation, because expectation is creating assumption, which causes distortion in the ley lines, because then we expect someone else to be the same program in which we are. And most of the time, rarely, never, that's the case, because we all have our own rhythms. We all have our own likes and dislikes, and we can have similar things, yet each person is super unique to their own design. Not one person is exactly the same. That's the beauty. That's the beauty. And so love and all of this stuff on the outside world that we want to bring in, the mindfulness comes in with like, whoa, let me check myself. Let me check my own mind. Let me check my own heart and see where I am in alignment with the authenticity of what I'm walking to, so that I can match that with the outside world. It's pretty cool. That's where the mastery comes in. That's where it's like we really get next level in our consciousness. And doing that little bit of work, it doesn't take very much. That's what I'm saying. We're so simple. It doesn't take that much to change. And then it all starts to happen for us, like in this beautiful way. And if you're continuing to fall in the alignment of constant distortion, and you don't know what it is, take some time to be quiet. It may take a while. It may take not very much time, and listen. Allow yourself to sit and just look and listen, because that's where it all really comes from. That's where we really get to see ourselves, because we say, oh, I don't know why I'm unhappy. I don't know why I'm stuck in this. Well, because you haven't sat to listen yet. You haven't sat to pay attention to where it's coming from, because it's coming from within you. just like it comes from within me. It's all about how real we want to be. Authenticity is the key to serendipity. That's one of the things that I like that comes into my mind, because it's like, hell yeah. Like, that's where the magic is. Like, that's where it's at. It's about being real, being authentic. And I've had a lot of distortion in my life because I've spoken a lot of authenticity. I just wasn't authentic within myself. So I wasn't speaking in a way that was more mindful and non-triggering and from a non-violent communicative place. Because when you step into the arena of someone else's psyche and you want to talk about deep stuff, it's up to you to be the master of how that happens. And when you talk to people about self-love, when you tell someone, this is the way I feel in this situation, not that you make me feel this way or you're doing this to me, this is how I feel in the moment, and I'm recognizing my own self-love. Therefore, I'm having a conversation with you about this because I want peace in my life. I want happiness in my life. When you tell people those things, watch what happens. They may get mad at first, but it won't take very long for them to chill out, because all we have to do is do a little dance and remind people sometimes, like, oh yeah, because we forget that it's about love. And because the programming is so deep. Talking in a mindful way has been huge for me to learn, and it's a really new thing for me. And this past year I've been working to develop that more, to not be triggered by someone else's reaction, and for me to explain myself. When we explain ourselves to people from our own perception, this is what I'm doing. I'm elevating my consciousness to be mindful around compassion. So I want to be compassionate with you right now when I'm talking about the way that I feel. And no matter how triggered the other person may get, they may get up and storm out of the room, and it's not you that's done it. It's their own subconscious triggering, but due to their own programming. I've seen people get so upset, and I have actually gotten this upset before in my life too, where you just start shaking and shaking, and it just gets so wild. You just want to like burst out of your body. Well, that's just an unaware chemical response to information, to words. I mean, it goes deep. So when we can recognize when someone else has deep programming, it's up to us how mindful we are to be able to communicate. And if the person just doesn't want to hear you, doesn't want to hear you, isn't in that mindset, well, then that's up to you, what you get to do to shift your own vibration so that you can maintain the peace and balance that you are creating within your own self. It's magic, I can tell you that. I love you to the moon, family. Thank you for tuning in today and listening and loving and continuing to be authentic and speak truth, because that's what it's all about. That's how we become more sovereign beings, and we really get tuned in with who we are. And then we can create community and be in alignment with other people, and life becomes much more simple. Aloha.